Hi guys, I'm Bill with Media Unlocked and welcome to the new Media Unlocked Studios. Thanks Grace for building this for us. It looks kind of cool, we think. I wanted to talk today about this baby, my favorite lens of all time, at least this week. It's the Canon 100 to 400, f4.5 to 5.6. Now this thing is wonderful. I've had this, thanks to our friends at B&H, for about a month now, and I have tested it under a variety of conditions. In fact, I haven't used really any other lens except this one for the last month. Want to let you know what I found out and why this is such a cool lens. So if you'll just bear with me a little bit, just a little bit of history. This lens is the new version 2, it's just out recently. Version 1 came out about 15 years ago. Now that's a long time between lens upgrades. Canon, there had been rumors floating around from Canon a long time that it was about to come out with a new version of this lens, and it just didn't happen, and now it's finally here. It's come out at roughly a $1,900 price point right now at B&H, and that's a good thing, as I thought it was going to come out a little bit higher. So, what's new? Now I'm going to pick my notes up here just to make sure I get it right, because the technical specs I tend to get a little confused. You know how it gets when you get old. Both of the lenses go to f5 at about 125 millimeters. The old version goes to f5.6 at 250 millimeters. This one goes at about 300, and this gives you a better reach, more bang for the buck, so to speak. The old lens close focused at about 180 millimeters. Now, think about it, 180 millimeters, that's almost 2 meters for your focus point. That is a long way away. This one, Canon rates it at 98 centimeters, just under 1 meter. But I took a look at some of the online reviews and they said they focused it down to about 80 millimeters. I didn't test that myself, so I'm going to trust Canon's version at 98 millimeters. The old one had a push-pull for the zoom, which this one, of course, has the more modern twist for the zoom. It still extends a very long way because it's a long reach. It's a 100 to 400 millimeter lens. But that push-pull had a tendency to get dirtier than the twist that we have today. So you had a tendency to get things working their way into the lenses. This is a little bit easier to deal with. Now it's about the same size as version 1, but it comes in at 200 grams heavier. Now that's both a plus and a minus. The same size is a really good thing because you've got much better optics in this one. The 200 grams heavier, that's where you've got more optics, that's where the weight comes from. And it makes it a little bit on the heavy side. That's one of the cons about it. We'll talk about that in a little bit better. The weather sealing, of course, is modern. Now you don't want to go drowning this lens in a creek or anything like that. But you know, you're caught in a minor rainstorm or something like that, it's not going to have serious impact on your gear. Lastly, there are 21 elements in 16 groups for version 2. The old version had 17 elements in 14 groups. Now this is a really big improvement, okay? The more elements you have, the better it controls the light, the better that your images look. Okay, so let's talk about those elements just for a little bit. Canon uses an air sphere coating. What that does is put little nano-sized particles of air inside the coating. That decreases the glare that you're going to get from the lens. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not going to replace a polarizing filter, but it does give you more flexibility until you put one on. That air sphere coating is really good. It's on all of the important optics. Lastly, of course, the cool thing about this Canon lens is that it has one fluorite element. Now, fluorite is a mineral. It's not glass. Usually, you only see fluorite in the very, very high-end lenses. Nikon has them out in the lenses with, well, a lot more money on it. Canon is gradually working its own way through their lenses. Right now, Canon offers it in 9 of their upper-end prime lenses and 5 of their zooms. The technology is gradually working its way down into all of their professional level lenses. They can do this because they grow their own fluoride at this point. Fluoride is a very expensive element. It's very fragile and it's very difficult to grind, which is why it's only found in the highest of the high-end lenses. Fluoride has a lower refractive index than glass does. What that means is that when the light enters the lens, it hits the fluoride element and the element bends the light less. That gives you a more true light path and a sharper image. When you add that to the fact that most of the rest of the glass in this lens is Canon's ultra-low dispersion technology, their coatings allow that lens to be sharper. And yeah, it's all about the sharp. What else is there? Okay, so let's talk about the image stabilization system. As everybody knows, great lenses have image stabilization these days. Now, just as a note, always turn your image stabilizer off when you're using a tripod. What happens is the image stabilizer isn't getting motion, and so it sends little vibrations out, and that vibration is actually introducing lack of quality to your image. So if you're on a tripod, turn your IS off. This particular lens has 3 modes to its image stabilizer. Mode 1 is designed for stationary objects. When I was down at the creeks shooting the rocks and the silky water, I could focus on a rock. It's not moving anywhere. I'm shooting handheld for a bit, and that's where I use the image stabilizer mode 1. Mode 2 is for panning. Now, I didn't use mode 2 at all because I didn't do any panning shots while I had it. But what it does is it turns off one of the axes of rotation so that the image stabilizer works faster. Mode 3 is really cool if you're using sports photography. Now this one is a little complex and you got to think it through for a minute, but what it does is it turns the image stabilizer off and only activates it with a full depression of the shutter button. Now that means that the focus works faster. So if you're shooting, as I did, at a local minor league team, the Lexington Legends, if you're shooting the baseball team, the runners, you can use your tracking and your case focusing sensors. Everything works a lot faster since the image stabilizer isn't slowing the systems down. So it's cool. You just shift from 1, 2 to 3 depending upon what you're shooting. I had no problem at all shooting with an image stabilizer at night, 1/60th of a second, and getting tack sharp images. I read some reviews online that said they had gotten it down to 1/10th of a second with tack sharpness. I didn't go that low on it. I didn't have a need to when I was testing it. But it really, really will help your photography to get a good grip on the image stabilizer, and this lens makes it easy. Okay, so in real world testing, how did this lens work out? I used it primarily in 3 different shooting situations. I do a lot of street photography. I'm working on a project right now called Summer in the City, and I used it at night because that gives the lens its toughest workout. Night photography is a lot tougher than daytime photography, and it makes the lens kind of really stretch, and it makes you explore the controls on the lens and how to use it to get your best images. I also used it in some sports photography when I shot the local minor league baseball team, the Lexington Legends, and it worked really well for that. I also used it when I was on my North Carolina and Tennessee trip, where my camera club goes each year. We focus and shoot on the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is a gorgeous place to shoot, looking for waterfalls and butterflies and sunsets and things like that. But I snuck away to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park because I had never really photographed there, and I was tired of shooting the same waterfall all the time. So I wanted a new one. I went over to the Cosby entrance and the Tremont entrance of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park and photographed there for a bit. Now, how did it work out? I found some vignetting issues. When the lens is wide open, at 100 millimeters, about 1 stop of vignetting in the corners. At 400 millimeters, it gave me about 2 stops of vignetting. Now, this is not a big deal because your average post-production software can handle about 3 stops of dark vignetting. So you just brighten up the corners a little bit and you can fix it in post without any significant issues. It's not unusual, of course, for a zoom lens to have vignetting. Everyone I've ever tested does. This one performed better than most of the others that I've seen. The image stabilization system particularly impressed me, especially when it came to the sports photography. By being able to shift to mode 3, it made the autofocus and the tracking system work so much faster. It was unbelievably fast. I've never had one that tracked as quickly under autofocusing situations. Now, when I used it in the Blue Ridge Parkway and the Great Smoky Mountains, it was superb. It gave me the sharpest images I've ever seen, pure and simple. It let me control the silky water. It let me control all of the light conditions that I needed to control. A combination of neutral density filters and polarizing filters, and I had exactly the shots I was looking for. Since I'm a commercial photographer and I try to sell those images, that's how I make my living. So pure and simple, it was a fantastic lens for that. Now I'm going to pop some images up that I've used this lens on for you to take a look at, and you can explore a little bit. The night photography in downtown Lexington, this lens is 4.5, okay? It's not a 2.8. It's not a night lens, pure and simple. Using it at night has its challenges. It was really a bit of an unfair test to do that. Now, I got unbelievably sharp images using a tripod with the image stabilizer turned off and just all of the techniques. But you're going to see some fuzziness in the images that popped up where somebody moved, because I'm shooting at a high ISO, which, by the way, it really worked well at. But I'm having to slow my shutter down to 1/60th of a second, and you're going to get some motion blur in the people that you photograph then. It worked really well for what it is. I'd rather have had a 2.8, but hey, sometimes you don't need a 2.8. It's not a night lens, but it worked really, really well. Cosby entrance to the park was basically one of the least used parts of the most popular national park there is. It was so easy to use this. Take a look at these images that I took over at Cosby. As you glance at them, look for my focal point, because you will find the sharpest part of this image is unbelievably sharp. I cannot stress how sharp this lens is. A very good friend of mine, John Snell, is an equine and nature photographer here in Lexington. He's world famous for his images. He says when he goes out to Keeneland to shoot racehorses, this is the only lens he takes. It's that sharp, just unbelievably sharp. Tremont Road, if you ever get a chance to go to Upper Tremont Road in the Great Smokies, take your camera, just drive the road. Every 10 feet, you're going to want to stop and take a picture. That's the way it works there, and this lens will help you out when you do it. It's just unbelievably sharp. I cannot overstress that. Take a look at these images. I think you're going to agree that this is about the sharpest lens you'll ever put your hands on.
You guys have made it this far. If you want to check out our newest video, it will be right here. If you want to check out the product, it will be down here. If you do happen to click on it and purchase it, it does give us a little bit of commission, and that helps me a lot keep making these videos. And of course, guys, right down below, go on and leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, follow along. We'll catch you next time.